Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6 o'clock. I can see it on the computer here. So good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Community Committee. In order to assist the process this evening, I must ask everyone to ensure that their mobile phones are either switched off or on silent mode. And we would be grateful if you would remain quiet whilst the meeting is in progress. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed by the Council and broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. If you're seated in the chamber, it's possible that the cameras will capture your image. By your presence, you're deemed to consent to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. As the chairman of the meeting, I can, at my discretion, terminate or suspend filming if, in my opinion, continuing to do so would prejudice the proceedings of the meeting, or if I consider that continued filming might infringe the rights of any individual or breach any statutory provision. Finally, there are no planned fire drills for this evening, and if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately via the emergency exit. Thank you. Okay, so we'll now start the meeting. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Geary, Councillor Loss and Councillor Mrs Spittle.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Has anyone got any interest they wish to declare for anything on the agenda? No declarations of interest. Item 3. Minutes of previous meetings. There were two lots of minutes here from the 20th of June and 22nd of August. And I just want to point out that on the 20th of June minutes, which are on page 5, just at the top, present, myself and the Vice Chairman are typed in twice. So, yeah, just noticed that, so that will be changed, but I just wanted to draw your attention to that. But other than that, are you happy that I sign these as correct? Can I have a proposal?
Happy to propose, Madam Chairman.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Are you all in agreement that they're signed? Thank you. Okay, straight on to item 4. Housing Services Quarterly Performance and Statistical Report, 1st of July to 30th September 2018. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. The report I bring before you tonight is to provide an update of the work of the Housing Service for the quarter 1st of July 2018 to the 30th of September 2018. And you will have had sight of the statistical appendix and performance update in Appendix 1. I intend to just highlight some key information and then take any questions that you may have. In the quarter, we had 246 households approach the service for housing and homeless advice. The majority were 146 for Christchurch and 100 for East. That's a decrease from the previous quarter of 124 cases, and we have identified some duplication which will have affected the numbers, and that's been sorted now. And we're currently reviewing the ways in which referrals can be made, which are currently online, by telephone and in person to the service. We of course have the new homelessness legislation, the HRA legislation, which came into force on the 3rd of April and means that many of the approaches are dealt with as a formal homeless application now. But just to point out that this doesn't mean that there'll be an increase in the number of what we call the main or full duties owed, but it does increase the actual administration and the case determination, mainly more letters for officers to send. So in the period we had 103 homeless applications, 59 for Christchurch and 46 for East. We had 156 homeless duties accepted in the quarter, 84 for Christchurch, 72 for East. As I mentioned before, there are only a small number which are for the main duty, which we can compare to what we called the same duty before. So 18 of these were for the new main duty or full duty, 10 for Christchurch and 8 for East, which can be broadly compared to homeless acceptances with a full duty under the previous legislation. Regarding the housing register, we had 835 new approaches, and there was a slight reduction in the number of live applications at the end of the quarter at just over 1,000. The need for one-bedroom accommodation remains the highest on the registers at 45.5% of the total. And the number of complaints, reviews, inquiries from MPs and members at 33 in the quarter was the highest since the 30th of June. And the inquiries and reviews that we get remain complex, requiring basically significant resource to respond to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This report is just for noting, but does anybody have any questions for Shelley? Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. The need for one-bedroom accommodation, it says it remains the highest at 45% of total. Why is that single people, is it, that need one bedroom?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, one-bedroom accommodation will be for single people and couples without children.
So why is it going up?
Basically, there's more single households than there were before. There's more. This has been a trend over a number of years that the more people are forming single households, more children who have been living at home with parents want to become independent and find their own accommodation. And this has been a growing trend nationally as well, as I understand it.
Thank you very much. No more questions? Okay, are you all happy then that we note this report? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Shelley. Right, we will now move on to item 5, New Country Park for Christchurch. David Barnes, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, members. I think what I would like to do is just highlight a number of the main points in the report, and in passing just thank those members who attended the briefing a couple of weeks ago. I hope that those members that were there found it informative, and those members that weren't there, you missed a good evening. In terms of the things I want to sort of emphasise from the report, two things really. First of all, with regards to the opportunity, the way I see it, this breaks into two sort of categories. The first, the opportunity to create a country park, a new country park for Christchurch. I've explained that hopefully in paragraphs 3.1 to 3.3. And secondly, giving that area additional environmental protection by designating it as a SANG, and I think, or suitable alternative natural green space. And I think members will be aware that a SANG is an extra level of protection, and a council is required, or an organisation is required, to maintain that SANG protection for what Natural England call a period of perpetuity, which is a minimum of 80 years. And I think for those people that might be concerned that, you know, what would a country park do, having it designated as a SANG will help to give some reassurance that we're providing that good level of environmental protection. So just speaking a little bit more detail about the sort of main elements of the country park, you'll see from the pages of the report that it gives us an opportunity to put on quite a wide range of activities, but I think the overriding theme is environmental protection, increasing biodiversity and promoting healthy living. It wouldn't come under the bracket of being something commercial in the same way as that other country parks operate. It is a close to nature experience that I think that the report sets out to explain. And something very important, just to make sure that people don't get the wrong end of the stick, it's not suggested that Stampit Marsh itself should be part of the park. That has a very heavy, if I might use that word, level of protection on it. It is a triple SI. It is an area which is very sensitive. And in consultation with Natural England, who are obviously sort of very interested in this project, the aim really is to divert visitors away from the marsh, leave it to the natural processes that exist there, leave the wildlife and fauna there, so that people actually can enjoy the park but leave the marsh alone. And that is a very sort of strong message that Natural England have given to us in terms of putting this proposal together. And I think it's very important for the Christchurch community, who we know cherish Stampit Marsh, that we maintain that level of protection for it. Again, as set out in pages of the report, it will inevitably lead to the loss of the 9-hole golf course. And I think I've explained in the pages of the report that at the moment, from a financial perspective, it just about breaks even, no more, no less. And since the report sort of went live on the intranet, we have used the opportunity in the intervening weeks to contact the members of Two Rivers Meet Leisure Centre who signed up for membership on the basis of being able to play golf. Now, there are over 1,500 members of Two Rivers Meet. Only 14 of those sort of signed up exclusively to golf. So we've written to those to explain the proposals. We've had 2 responses who, not very happy about it naturally, but I think they sort of understand that what we're trying to deliver here, or what the proposal tries to deliver here, is something for the greater good of the community. And we've also used the opportunity over the past couple of weeks to put a display up, I think the appendix attached to the report, which shows the draft layout. We put that draft layout up in the reception area of Two Rivers Meet Leisure Centre for other users, and the comments that have come back from the users have predominantly been positive. You will also possibly be aware that we issued a press release just to sort of advertise the fact that this report was coming to this committee for consideration by members, and the Echo ran an article on it. They also ran an Echo poll on it. 267 people bothered to respond to the poll, and of the responses, 78% were generally positive. I've also had 2 items of correspondence, both from Christchurch Citizens Association, who are supportive in principle of the park, but quite rightly and quite wisely raised a couple of questions, one to do with car parking and the other to do with toilets, and I've responded to that. And if members give the go ahead and we actually sort of set the park up, those sorts of items will need to be kept under review, as well as other issues as and when they emerge. So we've had some good positive feedback and some good constructive feedback as well thus far. I think the final thing I want to say about the park is that there is an opportunity to get it moving quite quickly, as you'll see from the sort of high level implementation timetable. We can go to a soft opening or naming event in February, March. And I think, bearing in mind we have Christchurch Borough Council ceasing to exist from the end of March 2019, it might be a good legacy for this council to leave to the people of Christchurch, a new country park which has some protection in perpetuity, as I said earlier. So that's the country park. In terms of the suitable alternative natural green space, as well as the environmental protection, you'll see in the report that it does give us the opportunity to allow some brownfield sites in and around the town centre to be developed, which can't probably be developed at the moment. We know that some of those sites are in need of a SANG, and this would be the ideal location. And in doing that, by allowing being able to develop on brownfield sites, you are therefore reducing pressure for development on the greenbelt. And I know that that's a sensitive issue for members and the community. So there's a potential win there. And I think the other thing about being able to do a little bit more development in and around the town centre is that it helps with town centre viability, in the sense that you have people living in and around the town centre who can use the shops and other facilities there. And there's a big debate, as you know, going on to the national level about the future of town centres. And this helps, I think, in some respects to buck the trend, if you like, and make sure that we have our town centre as active as we possibly can and have a good community feel for it. So there are a number of sort of spin-offs, if you like, through having the SANG in place. Financially, in the finance section of the report, members will see that there are no sort of additional costs to the council. There's a mechanism which allows the funding for the laying out of the park to be funded over a period of time from developer contributions. So no real financial outlay from the council's pocket. And I think finally, just back onto the theme of consultation and involvement, I think should members agree with this proposal, and the council does take it forward, we want to involve local community groups and community interest groups as much as we possibly can, because I very much see this as the community's park, not the council's. And I think if we enter it into that spirit, I'm sure that the public will get behind it, and there will be positive suggestions coming forward about how it might be moved forward in the future. So I'll pause there, Madam Chairman. Obviously, happy to take questions.
Okay, so I'm sure we've got a lot of questions. So if we could, we'll go into questions now, and if you have them, fine, put your hand up. But I don't want to get into debate. Can you make sure that these are just questions for the moment? You have the opportunity, obviously, to debate it after we've done the questions. So, Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The first question I'd like to ask, because it's very important, and I think it should have gone in first, is have you submitted a planning application, please?
No, we haven't submitted a planning application yet because we wanted to make sure that members were supportive of the project. There's no point in putting a planning application in if members do not want to explore the possibility of taking the project forward.
Next question is that I'm surprised that the CCA, Christchurch Citizens Association, supported it, because I was at that meeting, and the feeling I had, they weren't in favour of it because they wanted several questions answered. And one of them, which came in the letter you sent back, that I'd like to ask, is that you mentioned the Two Rivers Meet car park. Well, to have a sang, you've got to have free parking. But had you any idea that you're going to reduce parking at weekends for the leisure park, or because that hasn't come to resource or any other thing? So could I have that clarified, please?
Yes, certainly, and I'll give you copies of the correspondence, because there's been another letter from the CCA since the original one, and I've responded to that one as well, so I'll give you a copy of that. There isn't a requirement for a sang for a sang to have free parking. If we already have a regime in place here, then we've spoken to Natural England about this. There is no requirement to provide free parking. I can double check that, but I can assure you that the officers who had discussions with Natural England have discussed that, and it isn't an issue. But as I say, I will take that away and ask that question again.
Delighted to hear that, Madam Chairman, because as far as I'm concerned, with a sang, it stipulates that you do need free parking, and that does need to be clarified, please.
It was actually my understanding as well that in the core strategy it does state that it should be free, but I mean, if you're saying not, but I do think perhaps there should be some further clarification on that. Okay.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. As I say, there have been long conversations with Natural England about this, and that hasn't been an issue that's been raised by them. And I think where you're laying out a sang where you don't already have paid for parking, then that is probably the point at which you would try and introduce an element of free parking. But of course, the parking that we already have in our area is paid for parking, so I don't think Natural England have any expectation that we'll make the paid for parking free in the future.
Thank you. How many more have you got?
Two, if I may.
More. Okay, you carry on, because I'm sure there are lots of others.
Sure
so two more, and then we'll move on, and we can always come back to you.
For all my life. So, what I am concerned about, Mr. Barnes, is at the moment there are methane gas escapes. Have you done a safety check on those, and what was the result?
Yeah, I think there are continual safety checks in terms of methane, because obviously it has to be a safe place for the users of the golf course. I don't have the details to hand, but I'm aware from sort of colleagues in the engineering services team that those checks are periodically carried out. I think the risks now are comparatively low compared to when I joined the council and we were still venting methane and there was a flame coming out of the ground at times. But yes, I mean, I think that the safety environment is taken care of.
And one other question, if I may, Madam Chairman. I'd like to ask Mr. Barnes if he's managed to contact the groups that have worked with the council to improve the well-being of this special area. The groups such as the Friends of Stampit Marsh, the Stampit Marsh Management Committee, CHOG, Dorset Wildlife Trust, the RSPB, and any other nature volunteer groups, because there's quite a lot, and they put a lot of work into this area, and I think that they shouldn't have been ignored, and they're quite angry. I've had a lot of angry phone calls from people that saying, why are the council going ahead with this without any public consultation?
Yes, the answer to that is yes, they're all on the list. I think, as I've said in the report, we would want to engage with all of those groups. What we're looking for this evening is members' support for taking it forward, because the way I see it going forward is that although we have a draft layout, we would want to make sure that as part of actually taking that forward, we consulted with those various groups so they actually put their input and put their flavour into how it would look and feel. We've obviously had to work up to this point exclusively with Natural England, because they are the key statutory body, and obviously what Natural England do, they have quite an interest in supporting all of the groups that you talk about. But yes, I mean, yeah, we do need to involve all of those groups, but it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. We want to understand what the view of members is first, but as I said in the consultation section, we will need to involve all of those groups, and they're all on the list.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can always come back again in a minute. Has anybody else got questions? Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director Barnes, you've said that Natural England will have the final say. What's the general feeling coming out of Natural England? Because this is a wonderful proposal. It'll benefit the community no end. But if Natural England say, no, you can't do it, all right, where are we going to be? I'm hoping they won't say that. I'm hoping that they will come fully on board. But we are planning to do a huge amount of work, and they're going to have the final say. So have we got a warm feeling from Natural England, or are we totally in the dark?
To you, Madam Chairman. Yes, we've had discussions with Natural England. They have committed to writing in support of what we're attempting to achieve here. Now, that is outside of the planning process. I think a planning application, which we would have to put in to have it designated as a SANG, we would need to ensure that in that application we weren't moving too far away from what they specified, if you like. I mean, as I say, the draft layout has been very much with the input of Natural England. It's not officers from here. So I think the signs are very positive, actually. So I hope that will continue.
Councillor Bungay.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Hall's raised some of the issues that I raised at the previous when we had the briefing, but I am concerned that Dorset Wildlife Trust haven't been consulted at this stage. I'd also like to know if this is intended in any way to link into the proposed Stour Valley Park, which we've had various discussions of outside of this council. Nothing's ever come to us, but we've had a couple of briefings that were supposed to be held on it and were cancelled. And I'd certainly like to see a copy of Natural England's letter to digest actually what they put into it, because sometimes the legalese can override what they seem to be saying. So if we could have that, but the rest I'll wait until we go into debate.
Through you, Madam Chairman, the simple answer with regards to Stour Valley Park link is no. So, as far as I'm concerned, this is a Christchurch Borough Council project. It isn't a Stour Valley Park project. So hopefully that is a straightforward answer. And yes, happy to share the information that we've had thus far from Natural England.
Thank you, Councillor Hallam.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Currently, at the moment, Stampit Rec is used by various different sort of community bodies to raise funds for, whatever they're through the Lions or whatever it is for charities, etc. I mean, would that still be the case, that that area of space would be able to be hired out?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chairman, I have actually had a letter from the Lions asking precisely that, and I have responded to them, by saying that I think the future management regime, we want to try and accommodate those community activities where they don't really compromise or clash with what we're trying to do in terms of protecting the environment. Now, at the moment, they don't appear to, and it's something that we would need to obviously keep under review and plan very carefully. Now, the members here have mentioned some of the other the groups, the Wildlife Trust, the RSPB, and obviously we want to involve those in those sorts of decisions. So I think it's just a case of getting the balance right. Obviously, we want to make it a park that's enjoyable for everybody, but is also sensitive and supportive of the environment, and it should be possible to achieve that. And I've said to the Lions that should members decide to go ahead with this, they'll obviously be one of the groups that we would need to sort of consult going forward and have a dialogue with.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe others. So I've got a question. It's on the timetable here. The planning application submitted, you've got November 2018. Does that mean that you could get that to a planning committee in this December? I think the planning committee is the 6th of December. Would you be able to get to that? And then you've also got their community engagement to commence, but presumably with the planning application there'd be some sort of consultation anyway.
Apologies, I have to write it down, I forget it. In terms of planning application, I don't think we'd be able to get anything to committee until probably January. I think December might be a bit too soon. We would need to look into it, but as I said earlier, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. I would want to get the support of members to the project before we went down the planning application route, which is why we haven't done so already. So I think we're probably looking at January rather than December, but we can check on that. Obviously, it depends on what you decide this evening. And the second thing, in terms of community engagement, I think we would want to start straight away. Obviously, there is some consultation as part of the planning application process, but also sort of wider community engagement. Once members have made a decision, a positive decision to press ahead, that's the button on which we need to press in terms of having that sort of more detailed engagement with those community groups so that they come along the journey with the council.
Would that be, sorry, just to go on with that, would that be then like a proper consultation, the community engagement, like 6 weeks or whatever, a consultation?
We could do it that way, but it depends on whether members think, yes, we want to press ahead with this. If the mood in the room is, well, we're not sure what we want, whether we want to agree to it or not, let's consult with the public. That's in your gift. From my point of view, I would hope that members will make the decision to press ahead, and that as part of the process for moving ahead, an integral part of how we manage the park is the involvement of the community groups. So it isn't the council's country park, it is the communities. So that's the way I see it, but it's in the gift of members.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Watt?
Not wishing to preempt the decision that this committee will make, Director Barnes, what is the anticipated time for the community engagement? How long are we looking as a period of time for that?
Well, through you, Madam Chair, as I say, I'd want to start it straight away, and there is a more detailed timetable that one of the officers in the Countryside and Open Spaces team has put together. But I think this isn't just about the now. This is about the now and the next X number of years. I don't see this as a start and end process, because once we do the initial layout of the area, to me, what will help make the park stronger is that constant feedback from residents and community groups, where we might be able to improve things, where things that might not have gone particularly well, on day one, could be improved. So I don't see it as being an open and closed process. I see it as an open-ended process, and I think where we'll get a lot of the value in terms of what the park will deliver is getting the input from those groups. So as I say, the first task really from my point of view is to say, well, members, are you supportive of it? And secondly, if you are supportive of it, that's the point in time that we then sort of engage with those groups and the community in actually how we deliver it over the longer term.
Any other questions? I've just got one. Could you just tell us where you think the toilet facilities, would they be in Two Rivers Meet for this?
Yeah, that's a point that we will need to keep under review. Yes, there are toilets available in Two Rivers Meet, and the CTA have actually asked some questions about that. There are also some toilets in the car park on Bridge Street. At the moment, I am informed that there are no issues with regards to the public using the toilets at Two Rivers Meet. We would need to keep that under review. I mean, the idea is not to make it a visitor attraction in the same way as other country parks are in terms of that sort of commercial side of things. It's principally a country park really for the residents of this area. So in terms of the impact of numbers, I don't think we know enough to say yes, we need some new toilets, or no, we don't. But that is something that we would need to keep under review. It's very early days at the moment. We have to start somewhere. But I think we can be sensible enough and flexible enough to say, well, actually, if there is a point where we need toilets because we've got demand, then we'll need to do something about it. But we just can't say now.
Okay, thanks. Right, we just have one more question. Councillor Hall.
Madam Chairman, thank you for that, because I was very concerned in the letter back to CCA about the toilets, because toilets, I think, if we're going to increase the number of visitors and children and picnics, etc., we do definitely need toilets. And I said at the seminar you arranged that when we had the depot site come up for planning, there was going to be a visitor centre and toilets on that site. That fell through, and I do think it's important that we do have that facility. So the question is, you're saying now that it could happen.
Yes, I think if demand requires it. I mean, we don't know at this stage just how many people are going to be using it on a regular basis, and I think I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I said we need to build a big toilet block, which isn't actually needed. I think we need to get the park up and running. There are toilet facilities available, but if they're not sufficient for the number of people that come along and need to use a toilet, then we would need to keep it under review. So I think we need to keep our options open so we spend the taxpayers' money sensibly and obviously respond to the demand that we get.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Watts, and then if there aren't any others, I think we will go into debate after that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, Director Barnes, just help me here because I'm on the verge of being slightly confused, and I just need to make sure that in my mind I've got everything planned out correctly. This is a proposal. We're going to go out to community engagement. We're going to have to seek planning authority submittal, and then we're also going to have to make sure that Natural England are on board. Those things haven't been decided yet. It's then going to go to full council with possibly some of those things still outstanding. And because this is a proposal, it's not a final draft, will it come back to this committee or any other committee to say, Natural England are on board, this is the final draft of what it's going to look like, this is the final proposal, the community are all happy because they've all been engaged, and we're now going to crack on with it. Am I right? Because I don't see anywhere where this is going to come back for possibly any amendments, or if the community don't like it, or Natural England say no.
I think the decision that we're seeking in the report is: do you want to press ahead with developing a country park? Yes or no? Okay, so that's the decision we're after. And if it's a yes, we'll press on. If it's a no, we'll say thank you very much and put our tools away. In terms of the involvement of Natural England are supportive of it. In terms of setting up a country park, we do not need to designate it as a SANG for it to operate as a country park. The idea of designating it as a SANG was to give it that extra level of protection. I don't anticipate, sitting here, that Natural England, having already written to us and already worked with officers on a draft layout, would suddenly turn 360 and say, well, no, it's a thoroughly bad idea, because they're actually really quite excited about it. So there is a degree of risk in that the planning application, Natural England might object, but you know, we as far as I'm concerned, we've done enough due diligence to say that the answer to that will be, you know, definitely in support. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a clear-cut decision. In terms of community engagement, the one thing that we haven't done, we've not gone out and done a poll of people. We haven't done any sort of widespread consultation. We haven't done any referendum on it. We're at the stage now that, as I said earlier, I think in terms of consultation, that needs to be an ongoing process, and that the way that the park will develop will be shaped by the people that use it and the community groups that have an interest in it. And I think if we've got that fundamental backing from Natural England, then I feel comfortable that we're doing the right thing from that point of view.
One more. It is important.
It is a really quick one. I think it's fairly important. I just was wondering, obviously we're talking about it here at Communities, but the local ward councillors obviously aren't here. I was just wondering if they've been consulted and whether they've had an input to it.
Through you, Madam Chairman, yes, they have. And they both came to the member briefing, and they did ask a number of questions, which hopefully were answered. I wasn't sure whether I was expecting to see them here tonight, but they're obviously not. But I think the members that were at the briefing will attest to the fact that they were there and they did ask appropriate questions.
Okay. All right, I think we're going to debate. There may be other questions that come out anyway in debate. Who would like to start? Peter, are you closest to this? Did you want to start this?
I would like to start, if I may,
you did.
Madam Chairman. I do think that it could be good for Christchurch to have a country park. A coastal country park would be good, but I think there's a lot of questions that we haven't had answered. The director has done extremely well in answering the questions being put to him, but I think from the public and some of the things I've been told, we do need to go out for public consultation before we send it to council. So I think that at the moment, people are feeling it's just being railroaded through at a great rate of knots and without a lot of public consultation. I think public consultation is so important for Christchurch. We want to make sure in the dying days of our council that we do things absolutely in line with the public's requests. I think that's important. So I would like to make a change to the recommendation, Madam Chairman, and that is recommended that the Council or Community Committee approves the proposal to create a coastal country park, and as a key decision makes a formal recommendation to Council subject to public and community engagement, confirmation from Natural England and obtaining planning permission, and the outcomes recommended to the Council.
You're basically saying you approve the proposal. Could you just go through that slowly again?
Subject to.
So it's exactly what is in the recommendation, and then added on to the end, subject to
Public and community engagement, confirmation from Natural England, obtaining planning permission, and the recommendation of the outcomes to Council.
Is that full council?
Well, it's in here, Madam Chairman, recommendation to Council. So I presume they meant full Council on the recommendation.
Right. Okay.
It could even be, Madam Chairman, a special Council if it's necessary to sort out the time frame.
So at the moment we're approving this proposal subject to and recommending that to Council, but then you're talking about the outcomes come back to a full council. That's what you're saying.
Or this committee, whatever you prefer.
Well, that's your proposal. So, do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Jameson?
Thank you. I think this is a very nice idea. The only problem, I think, is the speed with which it's being brought through. But I'm very happy to second this with Peter's amendments. Thank you.
Councillor Bungay, I know you want to speak before, but as we had a proposal, I went for the second.
That's all right, Chairman. Thank you. I do have concerns because relying on Two Rivers Meet for toilet use, there are 2 toilets that are accessible on near the entrance, but you have to go through reception and into the actual facility to get to those toilets. There's 1 male and 1 female. Now, although there's not going to be a huge influx of people, I think that, taking into account there are a large number of people using Two Rivers Meet, is insufficient. And if you're at one end of the country park, as we're proposing it, it's a damn long walk to get to Two Rivers Meet. And if you've got a family with you, with children, not very user-friendly, shall we say. So I think the toilets are an important issue. We don't know in 2 years' time whether Two Rivers Meet will still be available. We're not going to be in charge. It might be privatised, anything could happen. So then there would be no toilets at all. I did raise the issue of car parking as well, but that's been looked at, so we'll leave that. The question was asked about continued use of Stampit recreation ground. And we were told, yes, if it's environmentally friendly and complies. Is the bonfire environmentally friendly? And that does an awful lot of good for charity in this borough. So that needs to be considered. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. I think the principle is good, but I think there's still too many unanswered questions that we need sorted out. I mean, Councillor Hall's amendment is laudable. I think we ought to include in that people like the RSPB, Dorset Wildlife Trust. They all need to be consulted, because
That is intended.
yeah, it's not actually sort of mentioned specifically. I would support it, providing there is a lot more investigation and thought put into it. At the moment, I'm sort of not too sure, because a lot of people are saying, well, it's an excuse to create a SANG so that building can take place. It's not really going to be of any great benefit. Now, I don't think that's true, but I think that could be a problem. The other thing is, there was a big article in the Sunday paper, the number of public parks that are being neglected, closed down, and play areas because local councils are no longer able to maintain them. I don't want to create something that in 5 years down the line is going to be a neglected wild area. We have to be able to guarantee that if we create this, it will be looked after and it will be maintained for the benefit of the people of Christchurch. So those questions need answering before I will give this 100% support. So I would go along with the amendment that more consultation needs to be taken place, the public need to be consulted, and then we come back with a fully detailed report on what is being proposed. But I don't think the toilet situation will be resolved by just having Two Rivers Meet. Thank you.
Thank you. Just coming out of that, if you don't mind, just come back to you, because I think you can, or hopefully I'll ask you, can you confirm that obviously all of the wildlife organisations will be consulted? It's my understanding that they will, including Dorset Wildlife Trust, etc. And the second thing is that if this was to be a SANG, then it is guaranteed to be an open space like that for 80 years. Is that correct? You were talking about maintenance and didn't want to see it, just go by the wayside. And I believe that becoming a SANG guarantees that it will stay for 80 years in that. Yeah, but there's funding for it. So perhaps you could just clarify.
Yeah, in answer to both of those questions, the answer is yes. In terms of saying that Natural England require that we manage and maintain it for a period of 80 years in perpetuity, the cost of which will be funded from development. So that is clear cut. Can I just come back on a couple of things? I understand some of the concerns that members have raised. I understand the amendment that is being proposed. The thing that I need to tell members about is that time is not on our side as a council, because this council isn't going to be in existence. And I think that if we proceed along the lines as suggested by Councillor Hall and as supported by Councillor Jameson, I'm not sure that we could deliver a decision for members to make before the end of March. Because if you're talking about consultation, then or extensive consultation, which I think is what Councillor Hall is talking about. Well, our protocol says I think it's 6 weeks minimum. So we will be going against our own protocol if we went for 3 weeks. We would have to prepare what that consultation was, what sort of questions we were asking. Is it a yes or no? Is it a quantitative? And then you basically have the work to do to look at the responses, sift through them, and try and draw some conclusions from them. And sometimes those conclusions aren't that conclusive. So if you do a qualitative consultation, people will say, well, I like this, this, and this, but I don't like this, this, and this. So what does that tell you? Do you do a basic referendum, in which case you might get, you may not get a response which adequately reflects the entirety of the population of Christchurch? You might just get a few people who don't want it to happen who vote no, and therefore you accept it as a no answer. So we can do all of that stuff, and if that is member instruction, we'll take it away. But I'm sitting here saying, if we proceed down that route, I cannot guarantee that members will be able to make that final decision. As I say, time is against us. It's an opportunity that's come up for us to be able to do something positive for the people of Christchurch. It's come up at the timing it has. It's not intended that we've got this short amount of time, but members, thinking about the fact that they still got the power to make these decisions before the end of Christchurch Council, I think they need to make a yes or no decision and have some conviction about it either way. That is my advice. I'm sorry if that's a little bit blunt, but this is the situation that we're in, and it's really having the faith that you want this to happen.
Okay, I've got two members wanting to speak. Can I go to Sally Denham-Wilkes because she hasn't spoken yet, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Bungay.
Thank you, Chairman. I was disappointed when I heard the original proposal from Councillor Hall, because I felt like the director has just said that this is something, if we want to do it, we're going to have to get on and do it. Otherwise, we are going to run out of time. And I think all the things that everybody is worried about can be covered over the next few weeks before it does come back to council and during the planning process. So personally, I would like to see us tonight saying, yes, this is an opportunity for the residents of Christchurch to have an extra area of parkland to go on, to walk on. I certainly myself, only at the very beginning of last month, walked across to Christchurch through that area and thought at the time, what a pity we haven't made much more of this, literally for the public. So when I read the report in the agenda, I was really pleased with it. And despite what's been said tonight and the proposal, I would prefer to go ahead now, tonight, and make the decision that we will move forward on this. And if we do find out in the future that for whatever reason we can't do it, that's up to us. But having been through very many consultation periods as a councillor over the years. I know how long it takes and how much work goes into them, and I feel that we'd just run out of time if we don't go ahead and make the decision tonight. So I wouldn't be able to support the proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Bungay again.
Thank you, Chairman. I think what upsets me is I think I and other members are being pressured to make a decision quickly. And I wonder why this idea hasn't been brought forward month, 2 months, 3 months ago, or earlier, to give us more time. It's just sort of popped up out of the ether, and suddenly we're being asked to make this very important decision very quickly, and that does rankle me a little bit, I have to say.
Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm happy to support the proposal in principle. However, I do have my reservations with regards to, I wouldn't want to see us moving forward at the detriment of the community groups not being able to use the facility, as has been mentioned, the Lions and Rotary. And what concerns me is that in item 4.9, it would appear that Natural England ultimately needs to give its approval to the proposals. Now, I wouldn't want to move forward with this in support only to reach the last bit of it where Natural England turn around and say, well, no, the use of the Lions and Rotary for their functions is inappropriate. And I couldn't support it then at that point, because I think the Lions and Rotary do so much for the residents of Christchurch that I wouldn't want it to be the detriment of the activities that they carry on with.
What?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm along the lines of majority of the councillors around here. I am somewhat concerned that we're at this stage in November discussing this. Why we weren't discussing this 6 months ago, I don't know, but you know what, we are where we are. I do have faith in our officers, and I do have faith that that at the end, by the time we get through to next March, next April, we will have something of notoriety, and it will be there for 80 years, and it will be paid for. My only thought is that, like the other councillors around here, I would like to see that we do proceed with this. I think that is the right thing to do. It's the right thing for the people. It's the right thing for the community. But I would like to see some report, even if it is just an update report to say we're on target, everybody's happy, Natural England are happy, we've got planning permission, and it's all going through and it's all cushy. I really would feel a lot more comfortable with having that report come back, even if it's just an interim report saying, yes, we're on target. That way, I would feel much more, as the leader has said, that the concerns that we've had have been addressed and there are no pitfalls, and everybody is going to be accommodated. So I'm happy to go with the amendments, but perhaps we may wish to amend the amendment to the fact of, do we have an interim report come back to us in January just to say everything's on target? Thank you.
I'd like to just come in here, because I think we all want to see this go ahead by the sounds of it, because we are time constrained. And I think the big issue is the public consultation, which is the length of time that will take it. Really, it might not even be possible. But the proposal is for community engagement. I believe that is what is in here. And that means community groups, or community groups. It also means wildlife or environmental groups, Natural England, Dorset Wildlife Trust, all the list that you've put forward earlier. And the community, which will be, I presume, like the CCA, all sort of community organisations that we have. So I'm just wondering whether, just a suggestion, that you take out the public consultation, but you leave it as the approves the proposal, with the community engagement, the confirmation of Natural England, which obviously we want anyway, and the submission of the planning application. Well, that's going to happen, isn't it? It's in here. And then perhaps take on board what Councillor Watts has said, that it then an update report comes back to this committee on the 23rd of January. So we leave it exactly as you had it, that it goes to full council, but subject to community engagement, confirmation approval by Natural England, submission of the planning application, and an update report comes back on the 23rd of January. I don't know whether you would accept that. What does members think?
Chairman, as a proposer, I'm happy to accept that it comes back an interim report, but apart from that, I'd like to keep it as it.
Still want a public consultation? Is that what you're saying? I was suggesting that it went to community engagement as the wording, rather than, but take out the public consultation. So it would be.
Madam Chairman, I'm happy to then take out the public and just leave it community engagement. But that would help get the thing moved. It comes back as an interim report. I don't know if there's
the seconder, what just, you would be happy with that? Okay, so, Dave, Mr. Joe.
Can I just ask? Sorry, I'm not meant to. I'm not meaning to be difficult here. I just want to make sure that we get it right. In terms of community engagement, I think we need to be really clear about what we mean by community engagement, because we can go and talk to however many groups, and we won't have answers for all of them, because we're at a point in time, we're at first steps here, and it will be over the course of time that we'll get the input of those groups into sort of developing the park. So I can see situations where we engage with the community, we have a talk with them, and some say this is a great idea, we back it 100%. Others will say no, we don't back it at all, we think it's horrible. With others, that it's not clear because we don't know enough. So where's the threshold in terms of saying, well, okay, we're still going to proceed, or we're not going to proceed? Or do we just do the community engagement and press ahead anyway? Because I want to be fair to those groups. I don't want it to be seen as a token gesture. As far as I'm concerned, you either do a proper, in-depth range of consultation and engagement, or you don't at this stage. I'm sorry if that is kind of going against kind of members' wishes to a certain extent. Ultimately, it is for you to decide. And just picking up on Councillor Bungay's comment earlier, apologies if you feel that you're being bounced. You're honestly not being bounced. The opportunity came up a couple of months ago. We were keen to get it in front of members, so you could decide whether you want to do it or not. I'm not telling you that you should do it, and I'm not telling you shouldn't do it. All I'm doing is putting this for you so you have the opportunity to make your decision, not mine. I hope that's helpful, Chairman. I'm looking around the table. I don't think it is, but I'm just being honest.
I think we've had a really good debate on this. There are a few more speakers, but I think we're going to have to bring this to a conclusion soon. So I think you wanted to say something else, and so did Councillor Hallam. So do you want to go first?
Just really that during the consultation with Natural England, that the officers do make it clear to Natural England right from the outset what use the Stampit recreation is currently used for, and that we would wish those uses to continue following what the leader said. Because if Natural England turn round straight away and say, no, we're not going to accept any of those uses, it's contrary to the environmental policies, then the whole thing will fall anyway, because I don't think members would support it. But if they are happy that those uses, including the bonfire, should continue, then great. That gets rid of one of the problems that people are concerned with. So I hope the officers take that on board and will consult on that with Natural England and then report back to us on what the result is. Thank you.
Mr. Barnes is nodding.
Yes, I don't think that would be a problem. I mean, Bonfire Night is a once a year event. It's a tradition, and you know the way that the park will work, there will be some areas that will want to keep as green and biodiverse as we possibly can, but other areas, such as the area where we traditionally held the fireworks, where it's a little bit more formal. It's not as wild, and we can still have some of our events on there. So I personally don't see it as a problem, Madam Chair.
Councillor Hallam, unless there's anybody else, I think we're then going to have to take this forward and go on.
Well, to be honest, I think Councillor Bungy's just echoed exactly what I was going to say. So, yeah, I'm happy to not say any more. Thank you.
Right, I think we need to be clear here what was said, and that you're happy as it's your proposal and you're seconding. So, have you got this? If not, I might have.
Okay, so it's still as the printer recommendation with the addition, and I might need some help on this bit. Subject to, sorry, it's on the right bit. Subject to community engagement and confirmation from Natural England and obtaining planning permission, the outcomes from which will be recommended to full council.
No, sorry, that end bit got changed. It wasn't.
Oh, sorry, the interim report.
It was not going back to full council again. It was then with an update report coming back to this committee in January 2019, wasn't it?
Yes. Sorry, yeah.
So I'll give that another go. Oh, hang on a minute, Councillor Wills.
Chairman, before we vote, I would like to be clear, that what is being said now about community consultation and community engagement, isn't a full-blown consultation, and that if we go ahead with it as is being worded with community engagement, the officers believe that we can achieve this in the time frame we have, because I'm certainly in favour of it in principle, and I don't believe we have to drag it out any further than necessary. I think what you were saying about bringing it back for interim report, yes, we will all be kept informed, but we're not actually delaying things now.
I'd just say that in the timetable, the high-level timetable, it actually states community engagement to commence. So I'm presuming that's what we're agreeing to, aren't we? Exactly what it says in the timetable at 3.18. That's it. So it's clear that that is what is asked for.
And is the officer happy with that? Is what I said.
Sorry, through you, Chairman. Thank you for Councillor Darren Wilkes for raising this. It is tricky because obviously the criteria that you're seeking to put in now are things around community engagement, agreement of Natural England, and subject to planning permission.
No, it's subject to submission or obtaining. Sorry, I thought it was submission of the planning application.
So in terms of the planning permission issue, if it means that and I'm pretty certain that we will not be able to get to planning committee till January, we will be in a position where January will be after the time that we'd provisionally put in to tender for the footpaths and fences, etc. Because we will already be able to join up with the procurement for something else, so we would miss that opportunity. So that tender process would slip back considerably by a number of months. So it is tricky.
Yeah, the wording perhaps should be submission of the application, not obtaining it.
Submission. I'm happy to change it to
Could
submission.
you change that again? And I think we're going to have this read out again. So what I've got here is exactly as it is, and then subject to community engagement, confirmation from Natural England, I suppose, and submission of planning. That's not planning permission, planning application. Application. And that's not the outcomes. And updates to be reported back to this committee in January 2019. Is that right?
That's perfect, Madam Chairman.
So it's updates to be reported to the committee in 2019. Do you want to say that again, or are you all happy with that? Yeah? Do you want to do it again? Yeah, so it's got the original on here, as is in the recommendation, subject to community engagement and confirmation from Natural England and submission of a planning application, updates to be reported to this committee in January 2019.
One question. Sorry. It is timetable to go to council as a key decision in December. So if it's going as a subject to, does that make it a key decision or not? I think that's my question for Nikki. We just need to be clear that we're not wrapping council in knots in terms of the decision making process.
That was a question I raised, that having subject to means that so full council can't make a decision when it's subject to still from this committee. It's either a decision of this committee or it's a recommendation subject to, and at which point full council can't make that decision.
Do you want to put?
Sorry, but can't we take it to the full council in December, as we said, but just have the updates come January and at any future subsequent meeting where it might be appropriate?
Councillor Flo.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just try and see if I can help in as much as the points that have been raised by councillors this evening are actually contained within the report. So if we're sticking to the report, it's actually covered in the report in terms of community groups, schools and general public will all be consulted, and that, you know, as I said earlier, Natural England will have the final say on whether we do or whether we don't. So I think perhaps for the purposes of moving things forward, we maybe go back to the original on the recommendation.
So you're perhaps suggesting we go back to original recommendation, but we still want an update to come back to this committee in January, because everything that's been mentioned in there of community engagement, submission of the planning application and Natural England is already in here anyway. It's going to happen anyway. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Sorry about that, Chairman. Yeah, it's contained within the report, those points.
So we've either got to ask the proposer whether we're happy to change it back, and if not, is there another proposal?
Chairman, I wouldn't like to change, but I think what we've agreed now, after a lot of debate, is quite simple. Although a lot of it's in the report, this just absolutely clarifies exactly our position, and it makes clear to the director exactly what we want. Although the report does cover it, the leader is absolutely right, but I think we had a lot of talk and debate, and I think we should leave it as it's been amended to the last one, so that we go to that. And I'd like to take that to the...
Mr. Barnes.
I've got a form of word. I propose a form of words which I think will assist Councillor Hall. So, if we have the recommendation as is retained, and that we add a new recommendation to say something along the lines of, I think this is correct. Council require that the community committee ensure that adequate community engagement is carried out, that confirmation is obtained from Natural England of their support, and that a planning application is submitted, and that a further update report is made to the January meeting of the community committee. That way that you get your decision and you get your safeguard and you get council telling the community committee that's what we want to see happen.
Would you be happy with that?
Not really.
Oh.
But there we are. Let's go to the vote.
Okay. So are you saying you want to leave your proposal as it was, or would you be happy with a number 1 as it is now, and number 2, which basically states what was in your second part of the proposal?
Very important that number 2, madam. That number 2 is very important to be in there. Can you read it?
Well, it will be in there. Yeah. Number 2.
Number 2 is the council requires that the community.
Can you put your microphone on? Sorry.
this is a recommendation of this committee to council, that when council received it, they agree, number one, but that council then requires that the community committee ensures that appropriate community engagement that is carried out, that the confirmation from Natural England of their support is confirmed, and that the relevant planning application is submitted, and that these matters are then reported back to the January meeting of the January meeting of the community committee. So you get what you want, but we're actually in line with taking it to council and council making that decision.
Are you happy?
I'm happy with that, thank you.
You're happy with that as a proposal then? And second,
I'm happy to second.
Right, I'd like to go to the vote on this now. Right, all those in favour?
Apologies for that. Yeah, I'll go now.
No, thank you very much. That was very, very helpful, and we got there in the end. Right. I think it was worthy of a lot of debate, though, because it's a very important issue. Okay, item 6. Statement of common ground. Simon, follow that then.
This is much easier, Chairman. Although I have to say that the theme of time running out before local government reorganisation does slightly apply to this report, but I'll come to that in a second. The primary purpose of this report tonight, Chairman, is really just for awareness raising as opposed to particularly a decision from the committee. And also, obviously, that you yourself, Chairman, did recommend that a report was brought on the Statement of Common Ground for member awareness. And that's primarily what this shortish report does. The need for a statement of common ground arises out of the duty to cooperate, which I think members are reasonably familiar with, a test which local authorities have to adhere to in terms of their strategic planning and local planning, that they have cooperated with neighbouring authorities on cross-boundary planning issues, of which housing need is probably the primary one, transport is another obvious one. I think the government's feeling is perhaps that the duty to cooperate, because it is not a duty to agree, has not particularly provided some of the results that it might have hoped for, particularly in terms of authorities sharing each other's housing needs. And therefore, as part of the National Planning Policy Framework revisions this year and updates to the National Planning Practice Guidance, the idea of a statement of common ground was introduced, and I've set out how that is defined at paragraph 2.5 of your report. I should say statements of common ground are not new in planning. They're the subject of a lot of Section 78 appeals and indeed local plan examinations where planning inspectors recommend that parties at least indicate to them what issues they agree on and therefore don't need to be the subject of discussion at examination. So the concept is not new, but applying it to strategic planning decisions is a new requirement. In terms of a statement of common ground for Dorset, the Strategic Planning Forum has considered the draft statement of common ground that currently exists, and that's in your appendix, draft 3rd of October 2018. And I should say that that is a version which has been through full council at Purbeck District Council. Because I think, Chairman, the one thing that and this comes back to local government reorganisation and timing, that is fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, is that the requirement for authorities to sign up to a statement of common ground at the moment is largely driven by Purbeck District Council, who are in a position to submit their local plan review prior to the 31st of March. And in fact, they intend, as I understand it, to submit by the end of February next year. The requirement of the National Planning Policy Framework is that an authority needs to have a signed statement of common ground in place when it submits its plan to the Secretary of State. So Purbeck at the moment are the only council who will be in the position prior to local government reorganisation of actually submitting their plan to the Secretary of State. We're progressing our plans as best we can, but we won't be in a position to actually have submitted the plan and have this triggered for ourselves. But nonetheless, because of Purbec's progress, and we have to respect obviously that they're making good progress on their plan, then that has a knock-on impact on the other existing authorities prior to local government reorganisation. So I think that's a very important point to make, because although the primary purpose, as I said, of this report is information and awareness raising, it is now looking like I will have to come back with pretty much an identical report sometime in February to this committee seeking a formal endorsement of this statement of common ground. And that's why, as the second part of the recommendation tonight, is for this committee just to consider how it might want to deal with it. The current draft statement of common ground is pretty much a factual document, and in fact so much so that in all honesty it doesn't quite actually meet the tests of a statement of common ground that the planning practice guidance sets out. So in paragraph 3.2 of the report, I've listed what the planning practice guidance suggests a statement of common ground should cover. I would say at the moment the Dorset statement of common ground effectively covers points A to E on that list, but in terms of F and G particularly, which starts to talk about how distribution of housing needs and other development needs in an area are to be met, including unmet need across the area, all that this draft really does is highlight that that is a major issue, but it doesn't suggest any way of form of agreement on how respective authorities deal with that. I have to be honest, Chairman, that that's not a particular problem for us or indeed our colleagues in East Dorset. It'll be interesting to see what the inspector who examines the Purbeck plan actually makes of the statement of common ground. But in terms of the substance of it at the moment, I have to say, Chairman, that there's nothing in it that causes me to advise you that there's any concern in this council being a signatory to it. It's largely fact, as you'll probably have seen if you've read through it. It does suggest what issues there are and scopes out a huge range of potential solutions to those issues, but it is not a policy document. It doesn't circumvent any of our own local plans, and therefore, as I say, I'm comfortable that when we do bring this back to committee or whatever mechanism you wish, that signing up to it does not fetter this council in its own local planning decisions. I think, Chairman, that is all I need to say at the moment. Let me just double check. Yes, as I say, there's no public consultation involved with the statement of common ground. It is a document really related to the examination process. So, as I say, it is a matter for this council to decide that it wants to sign it. Sorry, the one point that I did want to make, which I nearly forgot, is to say that if you were to look at this and feel that there is any section of it or sentence in it that you're not happy with, the convention with statements of common ground is that you can sign up to it. However, you can append a statement to say we're happy to sign up to it, but for example, paragraph 3.2 we're not happy with and we don't accept that paragraph. That is generally how SOCGs work in the appeals process. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. There are two recommendations. One is that we note the contents of this report, but the second one is that we agree an appropriate mechanism for signing it when required to do so. So I just want to point that out. But do any of you have any questions for the officer? Yes. Councillor Hall.
If I may, Madam Chairman, is that common ground, do you mean registered common ground? No, that's what I wanted to answer.
Councillor Flo.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I ask the officer an appropriate mechanism? Would an appropriate mechanism be that the decision is made by the full council, please?
I mean, personally, Chairman, I don't think it needs to be a full council decision because this, as I said, it's not a council policy document. It's effectively an agreement to inform an examination process, which in this case is not our own. I mean, by the time, say, Christchurch Borough Council or the Christchurch local plan progresses to examination, I would imagine we'll be onto a different version of this same document. So I would say at this stage, really what we're doing is signing up to a document which is primarily used by our colleagues in Purbeck. So I my understanding of the democratic process here is that doesn't need to be a full council decision.
Does that mean that it would need to be an individual within the council, either leader or a chairman, or have you got any suggestions as to what an appropriate mechanism is?
Well, there's no guidance as to actually physically who signs it. I mean, I think the committee could authorise a member, either the leader or someone else, to sign the document itself.
Thank you. Councillor Bungay, you were first, and then Councillor Watson a moment.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wonder, I'm on page 60 and I'm wondering where these figures for housing needs come from, because if you look at the number of homes for just Christchurch, Bournemouth and Poole over the projected period per annum, we're talking about nearly 22,000 homes to be built in just this area. And if you take the whole of Dorset, there ain't going to be much green land left in Dorset. It's going to be a spread of concrete. And I know people need houses, but I just get concerned where people get these figures from for housing need. Are they based on projected ideas or what? Because, you know, at the end, if this is going across the whole of the UK, there's not going to be much land left to grow things on for people to eat. It's going to be
Councillor Bungay, there's methodology for this, and I think the officer will probably explain.
To know where these figures come from.
I've got unfortunately different page numbers to you, but if it's the table on, well, it says page 8 of 30 in the actual. So there's two columns in that table. The first column is existing local plan targets. So the 566 per annum for Christchurch and East Dorset is in our current adopted local plan. And then the second column, which is local housing needs assessment, based on the new, well, it says from new methodology, September 2017, which has a separate figure for Christchurch of 352 homes per annum. That is the government's new national methodology. And that is the figure that we've used in the Christchurch local plan review. And I've alluded to the fact in the report that in Christchurch, we're not proposing to be able to actually meet that figure for the reasons that Councillor Bungay's referred to.
Thank you. Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The officer very kindly said that this has already gone through Purbeck. Purbeck must have come up with a mechanism for appropriate signatures. What was their version of what was appropriate, and could we not just adopt that?
Possibly. I don't know, so I'll have to find out.
Any other questions? I just ask one. This has come up before, you'll know this question, and I don't know if there's an answer yet because there wasn't before. But when you look at the housing figures that are required with the new methodology, and that's how they are calculated, and you look at the current status of the three local plans of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. Christchurch, we're advanced and we're heading towards submission. Poole have submitted theirs. Bournemouth are a little bit behind, somewhat behind. So at the moment, we're looking at having a 5-year land supply, as I understand it, and so are Poole, but I'm not sure if Bournemouth are. So when it goes into a unitary authority and the whole thing is put together, does that mean that we will, as a single authority, be deficient in housing capacity for a 5-year land supply?
The answer at the moment still is we don't know an answer to that, but a legal opinion has been sought by the authorities to try to get some guidance on that. I mean, this is completely new territory in terms of whether you can have a 5-year land supply calculated for part of a council area. I think the other problem that the national methodology throws up is, I mean, one simple way to calculate 5-year land supply for Bournemouth, Christchurch, Poole is to add up the three figures in the national methodology. Unfortunately, because the new national methodology, although it uses household forecast as its basis, which you can add up, it then uses a affordability criteria based on local affordability house price to income ratios, which are not the same in the three areas. In fact, in Christchurch, they will be the highest, about over nearly 13 to 1. So that in itself means that it's quite difficult. The figure for a combined area may be different to adding up the sum of the three figures. I'm told that a barrister's opinion is awaited imminently, and obviously when I see it and get a chance to see it and digest it, we'll try to get you an answer.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Okay, right, okay, well, we can, well, actually, as far as this is concerned, number one, the contents of the report are to be noted. Are you all happy that we note those? Did you want to say you're happy with that? And then number two, we agree an appropriate mechanism for signing this. So perhaps we could have some debate on that and see what we feel about that. Does anybody wish to start? Councillor Darren Wilkes and then Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Chairman. I was simply going to suggest that the Chairman and the Vice Chairman of this committee make the decision.
That's a proposal. Yeah.
Propose,
Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Hallam?
Seems very sensible. I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Watts, did you want to speak?
My point is now null and void, Madam Chairman.
Anybody else wish to speak on this? Okay, we have a proposal and it's seconded. All those in favour? Yeah. Item 7. Whew, getting there. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Saxon Square Car Park Public Space Protection Order. Sean, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. Members previously resolved to the making of a public space protection order for Saxon Square Car Park back in towards the end of 2015, and the order duly came into force 19th of January 2016. The PSPO lasts for 3 years, and after that time frame it must be reviewed, and it can be either extended for a further time period or cancelled. The PSPO was made following complaints of noise and antisocial behaviour from the car park, and whilst over that 3-year period calls have been received, there hasn't been a need for any formal action to be taken, and in fact no complaints have been received in the last 12 to 18 months by ourselves, and the police indicate that they similarly haven't received calls about it. Having said all of that, I believe that last week we did receive a complaint about noise, and that's currently under investigation, so we'll have to see what comes of that. As I mentioned, the PSPO must be reviewed, and the guidance that accompanies the legislation advises that the PSPO Public Space Protection Order can be extended if it is considered necessary to prevent the original behaviour from occurring. And the guidance also advises that we should seek the views of the police and other community representatives as part of the review. So we've spoken to Dorset Police, and the local police have said that although they haven't had the need to take formal action, they have used the threat of enforcement of the PSPO, and they do see it as a useful deterrent, and they are concerned that if it is cancelled, the previous behaviours could recur, and so their preference is for the order to be extended for a further 3 years. We also spoke to the town centre ward members, and they were also supportive of the extension, and there was a view that again the behaviours could continue if the order wasn't in force. So essentially that's it. Members are therefore asked to approve the extension of the PSPO for a further 3 years. I'm quite happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Yes, anybody have any questions for Sean? No? Oh, that was easy. Right. Ward Councillor, you'd like to go into debate?
Yes, please, just to propose, and I thank the officer all the time and effort he's put into it. I think it's working very well. Thank you.
Councillor Fleck?
Happy to second, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Any debate? All those in favour? Excellent. As item 8, we have an additional item. You will have had this separate paper, which is the Citizens' Advice Christchurch. Judith, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. Thank you for allowing me to bring this item as an urgent item. I hope that you've had time to read the report since we sent it round at the end of last week. The situation, as you are probably aware, is that we have currently have a service level agreement with Christchurch Citizens Advice. The SLA has 1 year still to run, and that has been agreed as part of the transfer to becoming BCP Council, that that will be honoured. So that sum that we give to Christchurch Citizens Advice will be included in the budget for next year. So that is all covered. But the reason for the urgent item was that you will have seen the letters that are the appendices to the report, which detail the difficulty that Christchurch Citizens Advice has been having in terms of recruitment, and the pressure that that's been putting on the part-time manager, and the implications for the service, because there is only one qualified person and she's part-time to provide the support to the volunteers who help with advice, and therefore there would be days during the week when that advice would not be available to Christchurch residents. I'm told that Christchurch Citizens Advice and Bournemouth and Poole Citizens Advice had already been discussing the opportunity of a merger based on the local government reorganisation when this situation arose. And so the proposal is that they would like to bring that forward and combine their services to build resilience into the Christchurch offer, bearing in mind the terms of the service level agreement that we already have, so that would still be honoured. And therefore the request is that the funding that we currently give to Christchurch Citizens Advice would be given to what is currently Bournemouth and Poole Citizens Advice, but which would become Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Citizens Advice for 1 year, which is the till the end of the service level agreement, to try to build that resilience into the organisation so that they can continue to provide advice locally. So I'm happy to answer any question.
Any questions? Councillor Bungay?
Just a quick one. I'm saying from what you're saying that the office in Christchurch would remain in Christchurch because people obviously have difficulty travelling into Bournemouth or Poole.
Yes, I think the proposal is that the office would remain open until the end of the year, but then that they would provide advice from different locations around the borough. And you'll see, I think it's in Appendix 2 in the letter from Bournemouth and Poole Citizens Advice, the proposals that they're making for different facilities in the library, in this building, and identified locations around the borough, so that in fact they would be providing a much wider range of locations.
Thank you. That's on page 10, isn't it? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for the officer? Okay. So we're going to debate. Who would like to start this off? Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Chairman, I was at a meeting at the CAB quite recently, and this did come up at the meeting. The problem is getting staff at the CAB. They've advertised. Christine is supposed to be part-time, and she has quite a lot of hours in her part-time. Also, she was the key holder, and when I think it was a tree fell on the roof, and she had to come out at 2 o'clock in the morning. I think they've sorted out the key issue, but it's very hard for them there. I don't think they've decided what they're going to do with the building yet. because they do own that building, so they'll have some money coming in if they sell it or if they rent it out. But I'm very happy to propose this as set out.
Thank you very much. Councillor Flagg?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, happy to second.
Anybody else wish to speak on this? Councillor Hannon?
I'd be very happy to support the recommendation. Just also really want to say that actually, in my point of view, I think it probably makes it more accessible for our residents in the fact that they are looking to be in various different locations. So for people that actually can't travel into the centre of Christchurch, you know, have got other opportunity to seek advice elsewhere. So yeah, very happy to support.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we have a proposal. Alice is seconded. All those in favour? Okay, pressing on now. Item 9. That's representation at meetings on behalf of the council, outside body reports. We have one report here from myself and Councillor Jameson from the Dorset Waste Partnership Joint Committee. Hopefully you've read it. If there's any issues, we will try to answer your questions. No, there are none. Okay. And the other item I draw your attention to is the minutes of the Dorset Health and Wellbeing Board, which were in the separate paper that you received. We don't have a direct representative on there from Christchurch Council, as it is the Dorset Board, but we do receive the minutes, so they're for you to see. Thank you. And then the final item on the agenda, which is now item 10, is the forward plan. I think the only thing in there now, 23rd of January, the report on the country park will be coming back to this committee. Is there anything else you want to add, Nicola? No.
No, so I was just going to say about the country park, and obviously to bear in mind that you've got 2 meetings left, so if there is anything like Councillor Hall has raised for resources, that you have an update report. If there's anything outstanding that you want officers to bring, then we need to know sooner rather than later, so that officers can plan that in to give you any updates.
Thank you very much. Meeting, I guess, Councillor Howard?
Sorry, just to close the loop, I guess, is that towards the end of, beginning or end of March, we should obviously have a full update, perhaps to just close the loop on the zigzag.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, the meeting is closed. Thank you very much, everybody.